All right, welcome back to the Utah CTO Show. I'm Brett. Here with Chris.
Hey guys.
And today we're really pleased to be here with Greg Wiggins, who is the Senior Vice President of Business Development at Cybage Software. Now, Cybage is a company based out of Pune, India. Correct?
It is. It's headquartered in Pune, India.
But you are based here in Utah.
I am based here in
and
Utah.
You are a Utah native?
I am not a Utah native.
But you've been here a long time.
I have been here at least close to 30 years now.
Awesome.
So, yeah.
Excellent. So you've definitely been around the block here in Utah. Maybe tell us a little bit about your tech career starting out and where you're at now.
Tech career, I started off at WordPerfect while I was getting my computer science degree at BYU. Mm-hmm. And they were looking at hiring people, and I said, this sounds like a great company. It's growing fast. So I jumped in and went through and continued my computer science degree, and afterwards stayed with WordPerfect. They obviously went through their whole Novell business unit buyout, transitioning and reselling to Corel as a part of that. So most of my initial journey was with large enterprise type companies until my next part of my journey, which was with a startup. So
awesome. And primarily what types of positions were you holding when you were first starting out?
So I started off with WordPerfect. I actually started off in support.
Awesome.
And I actually transitioned from there into testing, and then testing into development, which has given me a unique insight and a unique appreciation for customers that I think just developers by themselves don't have.
Yeah.
Because I would hear their problems, and as a part of that, I would always look for ways of helping to ease their issues, whatever that was. In fact, even as I transitioned through support, I would convince developers to give me access to their code. I would debug things for them and hand them back the code and say, here's where you make the code change to fix this problem. And that's kind of how my journey started with WordPerfect and my transition into development. So
my younger brother right now is trying to do the same thing, right? He's in his computer science degree. He's currently in support. And support, it works really closely with your testing team and works closely with the group that's debugging, and so I think that could kind of drive.
I think it's a great way to start. It's also a great way to get your foot in the door. Don't worry about getting in at a specific level. Just get your foot in the door, and typically you prove yourself, and that's how you accelerate through the companies.
That's one area that we were talking to Trina just a few minutes ago, kind of about this. That there is a gap in sort of the understanding of what kinds of jobs there are in tech companies, and there are a lot of support jobs out there that are open, and people can kind of get, like you said, it's a great way to get your foot in the door.
Yep.
Yeah, so I mean, along those lines, you've held several positions that are like CTO, VP of engineering, or director of development. So who handed those titles to you on a silver platter?
Is that how it went?
That's how it went, right?
That's pretty close how it went. The benefit that you get after Corel, I went on to go to a startup company, Altiris. We were just starting out, trying to accelerate the company, and that's where my journey into leadership and management actually accelerated. So that was back in 1999, internet bubble.
Yeah.
And that's also where I got my feet wet with the offshore outsourcing as a part of that. We couldn't hire fast enough, and we needed to grow. We needed products out. We had a lot of ideas, a lot of things we needed to accomplish. We utilized offshore in addition to local talent to help us accelerate it. And with that acceleration, naturally came leadership roles, management roles, directing roles, and so on down that path. Now it's not a career path that I sought.
Yeah.
As a developer, that's what I wanted to do. That was where my love for computers kind of took me down that path. And you know, my dad back in the late 70s brought home a TRS 80, and I don't know if you guys will remember
computer.
that.
Yeah.
It was a Model 2, it had 4K or 4 megahertz processor, it had 32K of RAM, big old 8-inch floppy drive, and it was the love of my life at that point. So that's what kind of got me into computers, and I immediately knew what my career path would be, what my education was. And so along that line, programming was all I wanted to do. I would spend easily 60 to 80-hour work weeks just coding. I would look outside, and all of a sudden it would be dark, and I would go, where the heck has the time gone?
Yeah.
And it's just something that I love to do. In fact, when they attempted to push management my direction, I told them no.
Yeah.
It's not something I wanted to do. And they convinced me that I was the person that needed to transition. And we negotiated. I said, okay, if you'll allow me to do 75% coding, then I'll go ahead and move into management.
That's awesome.
And then they tricked me, and then they started giving me more projects to manage,
Right.
and then it went into director roles, and then down to 25%. And pretty soon, my coders in my team would tell me, "You don't touch the code anymore. There's too many dependencies, and you're breaking things." So, but I still loved that part of the.
Yeah, absolutely. You no longer have enough context though to be helpful to him, probably.
Yeah. So that led me to that was still the love of my life. So hopefully my wife doesn't hear this, but also just I would look for any excuse to code. So whether it was a proof of concept, an MVP, just writing tools, whatever I could do to kind of keep myself engaged into that part of the business is what kept me, I think, going and excited.
Excellent, yeah. But ultimately, those positions were essentially hard fought. There was a lot of hard work behind that before you were promoted to those types of positions.
Yeah, there's definitely a lot of hours that goes in behind that in order to finally get to those positions. I mean, you know your teams very well. You know the company and the operations very well. So it's easier to transition.
Excellent.
So tell us a little bit more about the offshore work that you did. You're saying at Altiris you were trying to scale and you needed more support, and so you kind of went that route of how do we supplement our engineering team? Tell us sort of how you were able to start that process, what you looked for, how you were able to succeed and really scale. Because we know Altiris did pretty well. You guys did a really good job building that company. Like, what was really good and beneficial about that offshore work that you guys did?
It was more luck than anything. Just connecting up, I think, with the right outsourcing company, and just having everything fall into in line. And basically, since I love the business as well, new startup company, I was willing to invest any kind of time needed in order for my team offshore to be successful. So several trips yearly to go meet with them, and late night calls, early morning calls, a lot of discussions to just help us drive us in the right direction is what ultimately led to the additional growth in the company. What was funny is all the projects that I had were all, a lot of it was outsourced, but no other projects were outsourced within the company. And I kept telling them, this is a gold mine. You guys are missing out. I'm accelerating way faster than you guys are.
Well, and probably under a smaller budget.
Oh, yeah.
I imagine.
Yeah. Well, even with the same budget, I can accelerate faster with more engineers. So it was just a way for me to do that. And finally, somebody realized what was going on and said, hey, we probably ought to try it in our projects. And fast forward, 5 or 6 years, and you've got a 300 engineering team and a lot of projects developed, and a company is interested in us is like Symantec,
Right.
seeking to buy us.
Was that all in India, the offshoring outsourcing team that you had?
No, we also had an Estonia group that was actually through an acquisition, but they were also, I think, a pivotal part of our growth as well. What I found is, as I've worked with different outsourcing companies and countries, is they each bring a different talent to the industry. So sometimes it's not just one. Sometimes you need multiples out there in order to help address the market. And just like I mentioned in 1999, where we had serious supply and demand issues because of the internet, we have those same or even greater issues now that we're experiencing, and we have to figure out how to address it, or our growth here in Utah is going to get stifled.
So we often talk to different engineering managers, CTOs, leaders who, somewhat shy away from wanting to outsource, right? They definitely feel like keeping it in-house is very important and critical to their business, that they won't be as successful if they were to outsource or offshore their development. Tell us I know you mentioned you put in a lot of hours and you spent a lot of time getting up early or staying late to be on those calls, but tell us a little bit more about what it really takes to be successful with an offshore or outsourced team.
Well, communication is a big issue. When you have somebody that's on a completely different or opposite time zone, they're not sitting there in your building. They're not interacting with the various departments, so they're missing out on business discussions. So the information that they're getting is really through your contact. And me being that contact, it was important to make sure that I gave them all the information that they need, and I was willing to invest whatever time it needed in order to help accelerate that. So that's typically, I would say, is the top priority to focus on whenever you're working with any outsourcing company, is the communication side of that channel, and just making sure things are understood and they're qualifying those back to you.
So I wonder, with that communication, does it always have to be somebody either staying up late and getting up early, either here or on the other side of the world? Or are there maybe asynchronous communication methods that seem to work well?
Well, you need loop feedback. That's always important. So asynchronous typically is a little bit more of a challenge. It takes longer.
Yeah.
In those kind of situations.
You can have a delay of a day if you're not
Now,
doing it right.
Now, I always supplemented it by face-to-face as well, whether that was bringing people out or going there, because now you're forcing that whole communication channel for a long period of time, and it builds on itself. So you wake up the next morning, you continue. So those are things that I find people don't invest in that they should. They think that they can do it all remote, and there's something to a face-to-face conversation. I mean, we've got that going on right here, so there's obviously something to that, but that kind of opens up also that communication.
I had an experience once where I had a team in Latin America, and I, for the life of me, on the phone, could not understand them. It was very challenging. I mean, we had to have them repeat multiple times what they were saying, or we had to repeat ourselves multiple times. And then we put a trip in the books to go down and visit with them and really go into all the details. And then I came back from that trip, and every subsequent call on the phone, I could 100% understand what they were saying. And I think it had to do with, now I could see in my mind's eye, their faces, their expressions, how the accent played in English, right? It made such a huge difference having met them in person.
Yeah. And now with, obviously, video conferencing, that makes a huge difference.
It does.
As well. Absolutely. I mean, you get to see those facial expressions or confusion
Yeah,
on their face. And on a phone call, you didn't get to see confusion on their face.
Yeah.
That really helps.
So my one experience with outsourcing, or at least experience that I was directly involved with, the thing that made it successful, or that I felt like was the key to making it successful, was incorporating each individual into our team, rather than, hey, I'm going to throw this over the fence or over the border or something to the outsource group or the offshore group. Rather, I'm going to incorporate them as if they were just one of the
full contributing member
in the office. Yeah.
Just part of the company.
Part of the team.
So I don't know if you have had that same experience, if you feel like that makes a big difference, or. It's a very leading question, I realize.
I think it does.
Yeah.
It does make a difference. Obviously, if you're treated as a contractor, how you react and how you even invest on the other end, I think makes a difference. If you feel like you're a part of the company, just like the people here, if that means a late night, over the weekend, whatever, you find that those people step up and do that. The company that I work with now, and who worked for me in the past, that's what I would find. All of a sudden I would hear about, hey, the guys just came in on a Saturday and Sunday to sharpen the saw on JavaScript because they knew that you needed some JavaScript work that you were interested in doing, and it was like, oh, that's fantastic. Or staying up late to address an escalation issue, and I didn't ask them to do that, but that would be what an employee would typically do here. But having a group offshore actually step up and do that because they felt like they were part of the company and they had their own personal investment, it makes a huge difference. So I agree with you there, Brett.
Have you seen, just again, you today are managing this company, doing this work, outsourcing. Have you seen companies fail at, they sign up, they think this is going to be great, it's going to be cheaper, it's going to be better, we're going to scale. Have you seen them fail? And if so, why are they failing?
Yeah, I've seen them fail, even with the same company. So working with the same company, it's not necessarily the company, it's a combination. So at Altiris, that's probably a good example because we had scaled to that point of having a large number of engineers and a large number of projects that we were working on. And we found that the wrong kind of lead or the wrong kind of manager interacting with that did not fit well. And I find a lot of it is some of the things that you've mentioned, and that is, feeling like they're part of the group, getting that personal investment, having the right kind of personality of interaction, social skills, communication, wanting to make sure that the other team's successful plays a big part versus just, treating them as a contractor, for example. You treat them as a contractor with less communication, helping them be successful. And sometimes those will fail because they don't have enough information to be successful. They're guessing in a lot of these cases. So
I wonder if, so you've obviously worked with a lot of people with a lot of different backgrounds, developers, QA, et cetera, and all over the world. So I guess I'm wondering, do like entry-level programmers or QA, do they experience the same problems overseas as the entry-level people here, or are there different barriers or challenges that people are trying to overcome?
I think it's more of the education side of things than there is some cultural, obviously, but I think some of it's just education based. So if you find, for example, the people that go in and get a computer science degree and understand the theories and the information behind the low levels and the object-oriented programming, and the differences out there that actually gives that base, they think different, is what I find. Than those that kind of go through the tech path and have learned a specific language and they are more of an actor. I think it's more of an education or more background that differentiates the engineer as a part of that. Some culture plays a part as well, but I think education probably plays a little bit greater part.
Yeah, that makes sense. Another kind of similar question. Maybe companies here in Utah could potentially find it advantageous to hire, or maybe do you think that they would find it advantageous to hire outsource or offshore to kind of up the diversity within their own company, the diversity of thought, diversity of background and whatnot?
That can be advantageous. Obviously, bringing in people from diverse cultures and that think slightly different. I mean, it's the same thing that we're trying to do with bringing women more into the engineering side of things. They think different.
Yeah.
And because of that, they bring a different kind of value to the equation and a different way of maybe attacking a problem. So you can get that benefit by bringing in, cultures from additional areas to get their thoughts on how to address a problem. Yeah.
So we like to, help encourage engineering management here on the Utah CTO Show. We talked a little bit about this before we got into the episode here, Greg, but I'm curious just sort of the advice you might give to younger managers as they're kind of moving up in their careers about, what it takes to be successful and how they can maybe leverage some of these things that you've experienced in your career, and or whether it's outsourcing or whether it's, taking educational courses, things like that. Like, what can somebody do today that is trying to go that path to ultimately make it to where they want to go?
I would say, obviously, you want to make sure that's the path you want to take.
Yeah, test it out.
Because I would hate to have somebody go down a path and they find that's the wrong path. And I've actually talked to different people that have done that, and then they go back to just coders.
Yeah.
Because that's what they love to do. Those that want to go down, well, even down new technology paths. Really, what it comes down to in our industry is education and mentors. What I've always tried to do is I'd go through and get new roles. Like when they moved me to a CTO position, I'd never been a CTO before. I started looking up what the responsibilities of a CTO was on the website to make sure I was going to do it right. So you do a lot of research. You educate yourself. So I was constantly looking for ways of learning, and I learned also early on the value of mentors, and would connect up with mentors. I would go and seek them out, and I had many mentors throughout my career. And as I would try out new roles, even this new role as business development, that's brand new for me. So I'm educating myself.
Yeah, what that means.
On how to be the best person within this role. And I have a mentor as a part of that. Now, he may not realize he's my mentor, but it's Greg Butterfield. And I meet with him weekly, and he just provides so much guidance and background and value that you couldn't get just from reading a book.
Sure.
So that's something that I would recommend. For those people that are already at this level, what I would recommend is a reverse mentor as well. So if you've ever read Gen Z, then that's one of the books where they actually talk about the value that the young Generation Z brings to the table as far as really understanding where our industry is going. It's important to get back to your comment, Brad. It's good to get other perceptions into what they find important.
They're going to tell you not to send that mail, that regular snail mail to us.
That's right. Don't write the letter.
Well, so one thing that we like to do with each of our interviewees is give them opportunity to bring attention to any particular cause that you want people to know about, or potentially if you're looking to recruit, or if you're Cybage maybe specifically wanting to help other people recruit. How can they contact you? What would you like to promote on the podcast?
Well, I obviously have a passion for Utah and the Utah technology sector. In fact, when Silicon Slopes came out, I thought that was brilliant. Finally, somebody was attempting to encapsulate what we were trying to communicate to the world, and that is we were an industry to be reckoned with. And as a part of that, I've tried to promote that back. And we were sponsors of Silicon Slopes, for example. We're doing something for Innovate Utah, obviously contributing to this fantastic Utah CTO show.
Yeah. Thank you. We appreciate it.
Hopefully it's going to provide some value there too. But But what I see is the biggest challenge that we face right now, and I just happened to, in fact, you got a chance to meet him, Brett, was the deputy director of the GOED, Ben Hart.
Yeah.
And he validated a lot of things that I'm seeing here in the Valley, and that probably most people that will be listening would also confirm. And that is, our growth has caused a serious issue with staffing.
Yeah, we brought the jobs to Utah, but
Yes.
now we need to fill them.
But now we need to fill them. And as we've seen with the technology sector and with that supply and demand issue, it continues to drive up salaries.
Yeah.
And people are hopping around to get the higher salary, and we need to find a way of solving this before we get too expensive. And anything that I can do to help facilitate that, that's really my passion right now. Is if we can't fill the growth, then we're going to stagnate, and I would hate for that to happen.
Yep.
Awesome. So how can people contact you?
Well, the best way will probably be LinkedIn. You can go ahead and go to the Greg Wiggins LinkedIn and just send me a quick message. That's probably an easy way of doing that.
Or write your letter.
Or you,
You might get
or you
there.
can
We don't know.
write me a letter. Yeah.
No. Well, Greg, we really want to let you know we really appreciate you coming out, and we want to let our listeners know that we really appreciate them. Thank you for supporting the podcast. If you haven't already, go ahead and try and leave us a 5-star review, or send us some feedback if you don't
Do
think
they get
that we're
6 stars? Can you guys
Yeah.
give 6?
That would
Greg
be
will give
great.
us 6.
I'll give you 6. I'll figure out how to do that.
No, thank you so much, Greg. We appreciate you being here. This was a great interview. Thank you.
Yeah. Thanks, guys.